In this video, we'll take a step back and think about how an app actually works at a high level. The first thing to understand is that you can think of software, be it a mobile app, a web app, or any program running on your desktop computer, as a collection of components that send messages to each other. What do I mean by a collection of components? Well, one component that we've already used extensively is the button, but there are many others. When a button gets clicked, it sends a message to another part of your app saying, "Hey, I got clicked." The part of the app that receives this message from the button is called the Android activity. And it's the Android activity that has to decide what to do once it receives this message from the button. When we've been adding code to the onClick method, this is exactly what we've been specifying. We've been coding up the activity's response to the message from the button. The button sends the onClick message to the Android activity, and the activity decides what instructions should be executed when this message is received. Okay, so even though this onClick business might be all old news for you by now, this example neatly demonstrates how things actually work in the grander scheme of things inside an app. Firstly, it shows that an app or any software is made up of smaller components that talk to one another. These components include things that you can see, like a button on screen, as well as components that you cannot see, like your database. As an Android developer, you'll be working with lots and lots of components, and the key to becoming proficient at app development is learning how these components talk to one another. In other words, you'll be learning about what messages different components send and what messages they expect to receive. This brings us to the next point. A button isn't the only thing sending messages. Your app will also receive messages from the phone's operating system. When the user presses your app's launch icon on the home screen, the Android operating system will send a message to your app telling it, "Hey, you're being launched." This message is called onCreate. You will recognize the name onCreate because that's where you've been writing much of your code. In most of the previous apps, we've been adding instructions to the onCreate method in order to specify what should happen when our main activity receives a message from the operating system that our app is being launched. The same logic for exchanging messages applies to working with a cloud database. Let's take the Facebook app, for example. When you type in a status update and tap the Send button inside the app, the onClick method will send a message to Facebook's database that you have a new status. Conversely, when other people post their statuses, the cloud database will send a message to your app with information about your friends' posts so that Facebook's app in turn can show these messages on screen. In other words, your phone's Facebook app has a component that is listening for messages from Facebook's database. The key takeaway from this discussion is that an app is event-driven. The code executes instructions on the back of receiving a message that some event happened. The word event is really generic and can refer to anything from the user clicking a button, to the app being launched, to the database being updated, etc. In fact, you might or might not be surprised to hear that 99% of the time, your app is just sitting there, idle, waiting for some event to happen. Okay, so now that we've talked about this idea of messages being sent around between different components of an app, we can dive deeper into the messages that our app receives from the operating system. This is also known as the activity lifecycle. I'll see you in the next video.